Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Creating a Vision of Greatness with ZingTrain, a session that was presented at Children's Institute 2026 in Schaumburg, Illinois.
All right, it is the crack of 12:30, and I have a lot I'm going to try and cram in. So, and I'm going to give you plenty of chances to talk with each other and work today. So, for those who I haven't met yet, my name is Elle Nien. I work at a company called ZingTrain out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'll give you a little more information about our business and about myself as we go on. Suffice it to say, this is my 7th conference with the American Booksellers Association. I am always delighted to come back. I am a former bookseller, and I am also a reader. And when I say that I'm a reader, I really, really mean it. I read a lot. So I'll always talk about books. I also have 2 nephews who just turned 10. And so part of my job as their only aunt has been to foster their love of reading. So every birthday and Christmas, they get books. And that will continue for the rest of their lives, whether they like it or not. And so far they do. So let's get into it. Housekeeping, as always, the slides will be are already available in the app, as this workbook. I believe, given the size of the group, there'll be some extra workbooks. If you want to take them back and share them with anyone at your store, you could kind of walk them through the workbook yourself if you so choose. At the end, I'll give you a reminder about the survey. I believe it is really, really helpful for the ABA team for them to know who to invite back. So I'll just give you a reminder about that. Antitrust. I don't believe anything could come up in this session that would skirt any kind of antitrust collusion, but I'm going to say don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. No trust building or busting here. Okay. Except in terms of emotional trust. If we want that, not business things. Okay. So workshop objectives in the workbook on the top of the second page. This is the goal, what I hope you all will be able to do by the end of the session. The first one is to draft a vision of greatness for yourself and solicit productive, constructive feedback. I will talk more about that, but one of the many things I've learned about having practiced visioning for a long time, if you just ask people, what do you think? You don't typically get really useful information back, right? It's either super general, which leads you to believe they didn't read it at all, or it's hyper specific and sometimes critical in a way that you're like, I just wanted you to like it. Thank you. Stop telling me things. So I'm going to give you some guidance on ways to ask for feedback that will be helpful in the visioning process. You'll be able to use this approach to visioning in your personal and professional lives. So you're going to have a chance to practice as we go here today. And I'm just going to put this in your mind. You're going to have a chance to write a vision for whatever you want. I will give you some prompts. You could write it just for whatever in 1 year. Or if you have something else in mind, right? If you wanted to write a vision for an event, for your store, just know that you can write it for whatever you want. I'm going to lead you through the process, and of course, more information about that to come. And then getting to be able to call upon a network of peers to help get past roadblocks. In visioning content in particular, this is really important. There tends to be a lot of vulnerability that can be associated with this. If you are writing your hopes and dreams into a vision and then you're sharing it with someone else, which you will do in this session, it really can create kind of a special bond with people. You do not have to tell them anything that you put in your vision. I'm going to encourage you to read it, but you can edit it as you go. And I'm going to give you some prompts that will help make this a really safe place for you to be able to share your feedback with each other. So just know that'll happen. This training compact in the middle of page 2, anyone who has attended a session with me before has seen this. Zingerman's, we teach this a lot. So for us, where this comes from is the desire for our staff to actually do something differently as a result of training. And that doesn't happen automatically. So what we've learned is that we need to be very explicit that there are two important roles in any training setting. There's the trainer and the trainee, and we both have important roles to play. So for myself today, I've documented clear performance expectations, which were the objectives that I just went over. This is what I want you to know and be able to do. Then training resources have been provided for you. So it's the slides, it's the workbook, frankly, it's the candy bars, because 12:30 in the afternoon is not the highest energy time for everyone. So if you need a second one, there's more. You are welcome to get up. And please do not feel at all bad about crinkling to open or close it. I am very familiar with the crinkling noises. And I would say myself as a training resource. So not only today, but if you have other questions that come up, ZingTrain and myself personally are here as an ongoing training resource. And then I will verbally recognize and reward performance today. That's kind of the option I have. What I'm going to ask you is to live your side of the training compact, which is to take responsibility for the effectiveness of your training. And I don't know what that looks like for anyone, right? I know for myself personally, I'm a note taker. I do not retain information unless I write things down. So I have to do notes, right? I need that kinesthetic connection of writing things down for myself to stay alert and engaged and retain information. That I know that's not true for everyone. That was a very hard thing for me to learn as a beginner trainer. I was like, no, that was really good. Don't you want to write that down? But not everyone learns the same way that I do, right? So I would encourage you to do what you need to do. If you need to take a break and use the restroom, please do. I just hope you come back after that, okay? So I would also encourage you, if you can at all, give yourself permission to be here fully. Put your phones away or upside down on silent so that you can fully be present, especially when you're doing the writing work. Okay, so to kind of give yourself that freedom to do that. But I'm not going to police you in any way. I will say we believe that responsibility on either side of this goes up in increments of 100%. Because if not, it becomes like cleaning the break room, right? If everyone's responsible for cleaning the break room, who cleans the break room? No one, right? Or like the one person who can't take it anymore and breaks, right? Let's not do that. I want everyone to take responsibility for the effectiveness of their training. This is a training tool. I also teach training. You can take this and use this if you would like. Just take off Zingerman's, put in the name of your store or your business, okay? All right, I'm going to put you right to work with a reflection on the bottom of the page. So I want you to take a couple of moments. I'm going to set a timer and think about, what does success mean to you? So think about times that you felt really successful. What was going on, or what are some of those hallmarks of success, both on a personal level and on a business/professional level? Okay. So whatever you write, you are going to share these, but you don't have to share anything that you don't want to. So I'm going to give you let's do 3 minutes to write as many things as you can think of that give evidence of your own success. What do you define success to be? Okay, so in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to get into pairs and share your definitions of success. Before I do that, I just want to say it's always really interesting to me. So I teach a 2-day seminar on visioning, and we do the same exercise, and we give people 10 minutes. So what's interesting to me, so this is my 4th time teaching visioning in the month of June, right? I did a 90-minute keynote for restaurant owners earlier in the month, and then I did one for business people in mid-Michigan. That was a 4-hour workshop. Tuesday, I was with a group of principals from schools all over Michigan. That was 2.5 hours, and I've given them about the same amount of time, and every time people stop writing after about a minute. I'm like, I guarantee if I gave you that full 10 minutes, you would dig deeper. So I want you to think about that when you start sharing with each other. If you hear something from someone else, you feel free to add it to your list. If you hear something that makes you think of something else, though it's not the same, write it down. And I would encourage you to keep going on thinking about what your definition of success is. Because I have the feeling that if I started questioning you more directly about it, like, well, what about this? You're like, well, yeah, no, okay, that's on my list. Or like this, you're like, nope, right? You would have more. So I'm going to encourage you to dig a little deeper, not today, but for the purposes of visioning, defining success is a pretty important thing to do. I just, I want to encourage you to delve your own psyche a little further. At the top of page 3, I'm going to ask you to get into pairs to take turns sharing some of your own definitions of success, right? Both on the personal level and the professional or business level. A couple of things. One, no judging, please. You do not get to tell someone else that their definition of success is not correct, right? So we're just listening to each other. You can like something and add it to your list, but there is no room here for judging or trying to convince someone else that your definition of success is correct, right? Everyone's definition is their definition. So then at the end, I'm going to ask you just to report out a little bit on what some of those hallmarks of those definitions of success were. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 3 minutes each and then a little bit of time to kind of just a little bit of extra wiggle room. So how about 7 minutes? So roughly 3 minutes per person and then a little bit of extra time. So in pairs or a group of 3 if we need to. I did not count exactly. All right. I hate to cut the conversations short, but I would love to hear a little bit, what were some of the things that came up in terms of the personal success? What were some of the hallmarks of personal success?
Well, hi everybody. I'm Lana from Never Book Cafe in the Bronx. I initially wrote losing weight, and I know we're going to get into some technical stuff, but that was that personal thing for me. And as I talked with my partner, I said, okay, if I could just think a little bit bigger about that kind of one little area of success, like what does it represent in the larger sense as a goal? It is about maintaining my self-esteem in a way that helps me to maintain a healthy sense of identity. And that's the larger goal. Yeah, right. I mean, so I think I appreciate that you shared that, because I think that's one of the things that comes up is I'm going to talk about personal success, professional, business, and then I want to talk a little bit about societal definitions of success, right? Because what you really want is to feel good about yourself, to feel healthy and strong, right, and beautiful. But our society often tells us that a definition of success is something other than what we actually truly want, right? And that is, I mean, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but that is the big purpose of this exercise, is to really be able to narrow in on what do I want? What is my personal definition of success without some of those external influences creeping in, because really they have no place in your vision of success. Right? What I want for your vision of success is you personally, what do you want? Right? What does success feel like for you? So myself personally, joy is one of the big things I always put in my definition of success. I want a lot of laughter, right? I want to feel like I'm making a positive impact in the world. And that's kind of a bridge, because I am able to achieve that in my professional life, right? So I don't have to worry about it as much in my I mean, I should probably do all the good things in my personal life, right? But like, I want to be a good neighbor, right? That is a influence in my personal life. So what are some of the things that came up for the professional or business success?
So I put a couple, and then after she spoke about like what it means on a larger scale, I realized that they both equate to respect. So I put like recognition and like noticing like when a change I influence is like happening. Yeah. Sometimes those are mutually exclusive. Sometimes you don't get recognition for that, but you're like, okay, at least it's happening. Other times you do. And then when I don't feel like a total novice or like I newbie, and both of those ended up like.
It's about recognition, right? It's recognition for expertise. It's recognition for positive impact, right? For having made a change and it working. Because people notice when you try a change and it doesn't work. Let's go in the more positive direction. Yeah. I will say that, when we do this, we'll often talk more business, and profit doesn't always come up. I'm like, let's put that in our list of things that define success. Doesn't have to be like a madcap, like wild, crazy profit, but like some profit is good for any business, right? And I mean, I teach open book management, so like that's kind of influencing my thinking here, but it's not wrong to define success by being profitable, right? We work with a lot of nonprofits as well, and they will push back against that. And I'm like, you're just using your profit differently than a for-profit business does. You still need to balance your budget. You still want it to come out on the positive, right? So really the purpose of doing this before we get into the visioning work is to help you get clear on what your own definition of success is. Now, if you have, when we talk about personal visioning, if you have a partner in your life, hopefully you are in alignment about your definitions of success. That isn't always true, right? Or like if one person says they want to go on a big vacation, the other person's like, heck yeah. And then they're like, let's go to Europe. The other person's like, I thought we would go skiing. Or like, I want to go to Hawaii. I mean, like, right, we need to have the same definition of success to be able to get on the same page. And this is true with business owners as well, right? Especially if you have a partner in your business as well. People come to our 2-day seminars, and a large part of that is often two business owners who need to make decisions about what is next. And a great way to do that is to get in alignment on what success is, and then write your vision. What is it going to look like in 10 years? Because if your visions are divergent, that's okay. We just got to figure out how we're going to make that happen, right? Or when we've had partners leave our organization, right? I mean, ZingTrain had a founding partner named Maggie. We had another partner we'll talk about in just a moment. When each of them retired, visioning was an important part of like their definition of success. I did not have any say in whether Maggie retired or not, much to my dismay. I was like, no, you can't leave. But then it turns out her definition of success for her later years was not continuing to work every day. She's achieved that very successfully. That's great. All right, let's get into the visioning stuff. Now that we've thought a little bit about what success is, we talked about all those. This quote is from a gentleman named Ron Lippett, who I'll talk about more. I love this. I found it relatively recently because it, to me, embodies the frustration that led to him creating what we now call visioning, and he called preferred futuring, right? So the idea was that his major motivation was to break away from the frustrations of being bombarded day after day by the sound of problems, frustrations, and pains voiced by competent leaders who seem to be so immersed in the daily operations they can only talk about their immediate situation, right? Does anyone feel that frustration themselves? Yeah. So Ron Lippett, I love this picture. He is the founder of what we now call visioning. He called preferred futuring. He was a professor at the University of Michigan Institute of Social Research. He was a social scientist. And so his genesis was around initially the idea of problem solving, right? Because people could not get out of their way when they were trying to solve problems. So what Ron did, he would do focus groups, and he would get them together and have them, like one of the groups, he would have them focus on the problem. And then you could visibly see the energy in the room going down and down and down. Like, no, we tried that before. It'll never work, right? And then problems did not get solved. What Ron posited was that instead, if they focused on the solution, what does it look like when the problem has been solved? That would work better. And so he had groups do that. And in those groups, he called it preferred futuring, right? What does it look like? The energy would go up, and there was room for creativity and expansive thinking. And instead of saying, well, that'll never work, it would be like, we did try that before, but maybe it'll work now, right? And ultimately, problems ended up getting solved because they weren't focused on the problem. They were focused on what does it look like when we have solved this problem. So one of Ron's students in the 60s, it will not surprise you to know he was a professor in the 60s and 70s, was a gentleman named Stash Kazmierski, who went on to become a managing partner at ZingTrain. I love this. This was his professional trainer photo, both of them. So Stash did one of those studies with Ron, and his wasn't, the original problem versus preferred future. But Stash learned about preferred futuring from Ron, and one of the assignments in a class that Stash was taking with a group was to come up with like world peace. This is in the 70s. So Stash was like, everything's cool, man. Like world peace, groovy. And Ron basically was like, no, Try harder. So they went back to the drawing board and they came up with real evidence of success that included things like there's no more red phone in the Oval Office, right? Nuclear disarmament has been achieved. The Berlin Wall has come down, right? So when you would see, if you know that those things happened, right, you would know that we are well on our way towards achieving world peace. So Stash later was a consultant for Ford and would drive a half an hour every day from his home to Ford's headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan. And one of the days in the 80s, he heard on NPR that the Berlin Wall had come down. And his response was, yes, we did it. Like, did he personally really contribute to the Berlin Wall coming down? I mean, who's to say? Probably not, right? But that story, like it was so vivid for him and he remembered it. And what the fun coded of the story is that a gentleman that he knew he would see every single morning when Stash would go get coffee actually gave Stash a chunk of the Berlin Wall. And they didn't know each other very well. And when Stash asked, like, why are you giving this to me? He's like, I don't know. I just felt like you should have it. Right? I mean, just these little, so I don't necessarily buy into the whole metaphysical side of visioning, but there is something to it. And so Stash, he's who I learned visioning from when we used to go do this work together, he would bring that chunk of concrete and pass it around, right? So people could actually have in their hand a chunk of the Berlin Wall and connect to that story. So that is really the genesis of where this came from, this idea. Stash, I would say he's the one who brought it to Zingerman's. He taught it to thousands of people over the course of his career, and really, I consider us carrying on his legacy, teaching visioning to many more. On the next page, I wanted to just show this. So Zingerman's as an organization started in 1982. We had a single delicatessen, and at the top on page 4, 1982, this was really kind of what the two founding partners, Ari and Paul, wanted to achieve. With Stash's help, they wrote the next long-term vision, which was created in the early 90s. I think the work probably started in 93, was finished in 94, that went out to 2009, this 2009 vision. So that is in the format that I'm going to teach you today. Before that, Ari and Paul would say that they had a vision. They had goals that they wanted to accomplish, but it wasn't the same format that we're talking about here today. So part of the 2009 vision, it was a food odyssey. Get it? See what we did there? Yep. That's who we are. Those bullet points are essentially the section headers, but that speaks a lot to our definitions of success, right? So that we were going to grow, but we weren't ever going to have more than one of the same business. We were going to have independent, unique businesses that were part of a community of businesses that bought and sold from each other, but were legally separate. And we still are, right? That was the first time that the idea of managing partners came about. And so Maggie Bayless was friends with Ari and Paul, came up with the idea of ZingTrain, started with a fax machine in her attic, right? That's all you really needed to start a consulting business in the early 90s. But she was the third Zingerman's business after our bakery. So that I think, the other thing I wanted to highlight here too, you'll see that we said in the 2009 vision, 12 to 15 businesses. 2020, we said 12 to 18. You don't have to count the different logos of our different businesses on the right-hand side. I will tell you it's not 12. But I think even though we didn't achieve the number that we put in our vision, we got a lot closer to that than we would have had we not planted that flag in the sand to say we're going for multiple different businesses. What I want to highlight is in the 2009 vision, because this really has a lot to do with my history with Zingerman's. So I started working at Zingerman's as a seasonal temporary employee. I had no intention of staying, which was great because they also didn't intend to keep me. So I was going to work there for the holiday season, right? Our mail order business does 50% of their annual sales in the 2 months leading up to Christmas, November and December. So I got hired in the beginning of October. I was going to, maybe if I did a really good job, they would keep me through January, right? Before I had to go find another job. I started working at ZingTrain, and jokes on all of us. It'll be 20 years in the fall that I've been there. But thank you. 2006 was when I started working at Zingerman's. So Zingerman's was working on the 2020 vision, and there was an everyone email asking for feedback, right, on the vision. I didn't reply. I was like, there's no way I'm still going to be here in 2020. Okay, who knew? So I didn't reply. I didn't read it. I didn't reply. But then I got an email from Ari to me personally. Hey, Elnian, how's it going in the service center? Have you had a chance to read the 2020 vision? Curious, like, what are your thoughts? What do you find exciting and inspiring about it? Is there anything that you think is missing or needs to be clarified? I was like, well, I got opinions for days. Okay, I'll read this now. And one of the things that really stood out was the idea of Zingerman's being an education destination. Right? That was a content header, and then it went on to describe not only people coming to ZingTrain to learn about business stuff, or people coming to the bakery to learn how to bake, right? It was about our employees coming to Zingerman's to learn how to run a business and then going out to do whatever else with the rest of their lives because we knew they weren't going to stay with us forever. But that they would be better for having spent time working at Zingerman's than they would have been had they not come and worked for us. So we're going to teach them about leadership. We're going to teach them about customer service. We're going to teach them about the financials and how to actually run a business. And then they're going to leave, but that's okay because we want to be an education destination for people. And that really spoke to me. I loved that idea of it. What is extra fun is that we have multiple ZCOB is what we refer to the Zingerman's community of businesses. We have multiple alumni who have gone on to open other businesses. And in fact, 2 of them are bookstores who were both at the Winter Institute. Right? One is called Courageous Books. It's in Dexter, Michigan. The other one is White Whale Books. I think Jill is the owner and she's here, I believe, today. Right? So both of them had time at Zingerman's. That's how they met each other. It's how I know them. Right? So that idea is like, that is really, we've achieved that vision of success. Before I move on to talk more about visioning as a thing, I wanted to ask any questions about what you see here? Anything you see on page 4? White Whale Books and Courageous Books. Courageous Books just opened in September. She's doing great. Yes. So we did not really define exactly what that meant, but which is also, I think, more fun and speaks more to our organizational priority. One of the things from that section I do remember very vividly is we said we were going to have 380% more fun in 2020. Do you know what is really not fun to measure? It's fun. However, so we didn't exactly achieve 380% more fun. What we did, though, is because we committed to having more fun at work, we had a lot of conversations about what does fun at work mean to different people. Because for some people, it's that we go hang out, we go bowling after work. Other people, it's that they don't see you again until tomorrow. Right? So that was part of the hard part, is that we do not all share the same definition of fun. What we ended up learning about was organizational energy. And so that was a great learning. And we now talk about kind of our energetic presence and how we show up to work and how we interact with each other. We probably wouldn't have gotten there if we hadn't said we wanted to put the FU in fun. We're also kind of an irreverent company, or have been historically. Great question. Sarah.
What is moving us?
So that's a good question. The idea of that is when, like, as a company gets mature, right? So Zingerman's will turn 50 in the completion of the 2032 vision. You get less willing to say yes, right? The answer is often starting with no, and then, okay, well, maybe we can try it. So it was about kind of fighting that mentality of still being innovative, still being creative, still being able to say yes, and then figure out how to make it happen, right? Or like to at least speed up that decision making. That's kind of the intent behind that section, is to not get stuck in ruts.
What was the motivation behind doing your visioning 3 years before you hit your goal?
That's a great question, because we were done. We essentially had done most of what we set out to accomplish. And so that's actually going to be one of the things I'm going to talk about in the next section at the top of page 5. Visions end. Right? So even though it said it was going to end in 2020, we had done most of what we had to do. And so it was time for us to think about what comes next. So that is it's a natural point where you don't have to wait for the clock to run out. I have done vision facilitation with a number of different businesses and organizations. And I can think of 2 that I both worked with in February. One of them is a wholesale plant nursery. They wrote a vision in 2020 or in 2015 for 2025. They finished it and they were like, okay, now it is time for our next one. They waited the whole 10 years. I also worked with a wholesale propane equipment company, propane wholesale. I think it's wholesale propane equipment. I don't know what order in which to say what they do. Anyway, we helped them write their first vision in 2012, 10-year vision. They came back in 2018. They're like, we've done what we said we wanted to do. They wrote the next long-term vision, which was going to go out to 2028. They did that. And so they were back in February of this year to write their next long-term vision, which was going to go out to 2036. I imagine we'll see them before the end of that, right? But what is exciting about the wholesale propane equipment, right? You don't necessarily think of them as being like super visionary companies, right? It's pretty nuts and bolts what they do. But their vision helped them get through succession of dad, family-owned business, retiring and putting everything in the hands of his daughter, who took over as CEO. And she took over in 2020. And she's doing a great job. The company has grown. But visioning, they credit with a lot of having helped them get clear on what success was going to continue to look like for their company, right? So different people take different approaches. Some of them really want to run out the clock, but the very progressive propane company was like, no, we've done what we said we were going to do, and there's stuff in there that we don't want to work on anymore, right? That's the other part of it. So I am sure you are thinking to yourself, Eleni, and you have talked a lot about visioning. What the heck is it? Great, I will tell you. A vision is a picture of what success looks like at a particular point in time. And it's described with enough richness of detail and specificity, then you know when you're done, right? You know when you've accomplished it. I am purposefully using slightly different words than what is on the screen, because really the intention is a written picture of success set in the future, and it needs to be descriptive so that other people get excited and want to help you accomplish it. Right? So that written picture of success, it is a story. This is not bullet points. That is really, really hard for some folks. A vision is what, it is not how. Vision is, what do you want? What does success look like for you at a particular point in time, right? So often when we talk about big, long-term organizational visions, it's often 10 years is just a good benchmark, because who knows what could happen in 10 years, right? 10 years ago, I did not think we would have self-driving cars. 10 more years, we could have flying cars. I don't want that, to be very clear. That's not my vision of success. I think it would be terrible. But it could, innovation-wise, it could happen in 10 years. Who knows, right? So 10 years is just a good, horizon, because it's far enough that anything is possible, or most things are possible. A vision is also, and I said this before, it is set in the future, although it is written as though it's already happening. So visions are always future states. But that writing it in present tense, writing as though it's happening, is what grabs people about it. Because then they can picture it happening to them, or they can picture themselves as a part of it. And this goes to what you just asked. Visions are not evergreen. They end. They don't last forever. You just write your next vision. So we don't edit visions either. Once they're done, they're done. They don't get changed. If it's no longer true, then you write a new one. Okay. So this quote from Rosabeth Moss-Cantor, I just really like. The vision is not just a picture of what could be. It's an appeal to our better selves, a call to become something more. Right? So thinking about that kind of mentality around visioning, I think I had the quote from John McHale on the bottom of page 3, right? The question is no longer, can we change the world? The question becomes, what kind of world do we want? Right? When I lead group visioning, when I do vision facilitation, I write that on a piece of flip chart and put it in the room, because it is a shift in mindset for a lot of people who work in businesses to not just think about all the problems that they have and how do they solve them. Let's not worry about that now. Let's worry about, what do we want? Because then we can do some work in order to actually get there. But that is not an automatic mental shift for people. So the elements of an effective vision, number one, is that it needs to be inspiring. Right? I know some of you are store owners. If you're writing a business vision, who do you think should be inspired by your vision? Well, you should be, because if you are not inspired by your vision, then what's the point, right? Hopefully your staff will get inspired by your vision. Future staff, prospective staff. We often share visions as a part of our hiring process, because if someone is not like, heck yeah, I super want to do this, you're like, okay, right? We ask people to read it, and the person who comes in with a vision all dog-eared, right, with things highlighted and question marks in the corner, like that's who we want to hire, not the person who comes in with like a pristine copy and we ask, what questions do you have? And they're like, oh, I just liked everything. I'm like, yeah, you didn't read it. You should have questions. Because we write the vision for us, right? So we will inevitably put jargon in there that someone who doesn't know us wouldn't know the answer to. So they should have questions to a vision, right? So the inspiring part, the other element of this is that people want to engage with something bigger than themselves. So there's an old, I think it's an allegory. You can tell me if this is what kind of story it is, but you may have heard it before in other contexts, but of the famous stories of people going to a brick mason who is laying stone on one of the giant cathedrals in Europe. Right? They take like close to 100 years to build. They are very big and they took a long time, especially like in the olden days, right? So the story goes that someone would walk up to that first mason and ask, like, excuse me, what are you doing? And the mason would say, well, essentially, I'm laying stone. Duh. Can you not see what I'm doing? It's like, yes. Okay. Thank you. You go to the next person and ask, okay, what are you doing? And the person says, well, I'm building a wall, which is good because they're thinking beyond just the tactile, like bricklaying that they're doing. They're thinking about what they're doing as in a bigger context. It's like, okay, thank you. And then they go to the third person and ask, what are you doing? And that person says, I'm building a cathedral. Right? The mason who's laying the foundation will never attend services. Like their kids or grandkids might not ever attend services there. The work that they're doing is not the same, but how it feels is really different when you're building a cathedral versus laying stone. Right? So all of the mundane, tedious tasks that we do, that doesn't make them less tedious, but it does help when we can connect it with a higher purpose. I'm not asking you to do like inventory because I think it's super fun. I'm doing it because it's an important part of how we run our business. So, right. So people can connect with that higher thing, the inspiration. It's really, really like this is a big part of what visions are and what they do for us. The flip side of this coin is that it also needs to be strategically sound. We need to have some chance of actually making it happen, right? So I often think of like a rubber band, right? We want tension between inspiring and strategically sound. I don't want so much tension that the rubber band would snap, and I don't want so little that it just isn't meaningful anymore, right? So the strategically sound, it just needs to be boots on the ground. The thing that often comes up, people will ask, well, how do you know if it's strategically sound enough? Like, you don't. When you are writing a vision for the first time, I will always encourage people to err on the side of being inspiring versus strategically sound. Because other people can help you make your vision more strategically sound, it is a lot harder for them to help you make your vision more inspiring over time, right? If that first rush of writing, we want it to be as inspiring as possible. The other thing, it needs to be documented. You got to write it down. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who tend to be very visionary people. But if it's not documented, it becomes a moving target, right? It's a lot harder to communicate it when it isn't documented, or you end up playing a game of telephone where, oh, I have this great idea. We're going to do this new thing. Mary is like, super, I'm in. Let's go, right? And then I come over here and I talk to you and I'm like, okay, we're going to do this new thing. And you're like, okay, I'm in. Let's go. But now we're diverging a little bit because I've told you slightly different versions of the exact same thing. If it's documented and communicated, we can go back to it. We can say, hold on. What you just told her is a little bit different than what you just told me, right? So we can keep coming back to it. A vision, it helps us stay accountable to each other when it's documented. The other thing that a vision can do is to help you say no to really good opportunities. Does anyone ever have that happen where someone comes to you and they're like, oh my gosh, I have this amazing opportunity for you. And you're like, is it though? Right? I mean, so a very important question to ask is this going to help us accomplish our vision? Because if the answer is no, then it's easier to say no. Zingerman's is only located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That has been a part of our vision. We are firmly rooted in the Ann Arbor community. People call all the time to be like, oh my gosh, I have the best location for Zingerman's in Topeka, Kansas. I'm like, no bag on Topeka. I'm sure it is great, but it's not Ann Arbor, Michigan, right? We are rooted in our community. And an example of this too, we had someone from Disney who called, was like, I want you to have a Zingerman's, which is always hilarious when they say that. I'm like, a Zingerman's what? Nope, just a Zingerman's on Main Street, USA in Florida. And he's talking to our founding partner, and Ari is like, no, thank you. And the guy's like, no, I don't think you understand. like, he started rattling off some statistics, and Ari's like, well, no, we're in the Ann Arbor area. We're firmly rooted, right? We would not be able to get our bread there and have it be fresh every day. Like, this is just not what we do. And the guy was like, but it's a Disney. And Ari was like, okay, I tell you what, how about you come up and open a Disney in Ann Arbor? And the guy was like, oh, no. Ari's like, yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, it just becomes a lot easier to say no thank you to those kind of ideas. If we want to consider something, we have to decide this is outside what our vision says we do. Do we want to write a new vision and change and move in that direction? Right? Earlier this week, I mentioned I was doing visioning with principals from schools. And one of the things I talked about is grant opportunities come up all the time. It's like, okay, but do you spend all the time and effort to write a grant knowing that sometimes it's a little bit outside your remit and it's going to take a lot of time and effort away from the core vision of your business? I'm not going to tell you that your answer should be no, but it helps you decide where to prioritize. Okay? What I think can be really helpful here too is what a vision is not. So a vision is not the same as a mission statement. They serve different purposes. A mission for us is the North Star. It is true for the life of the organization. That will not change. Zingerman's mission statement was written in the early 90s. It's only changed once, and it's because it was not grammatically correct. During my tenure at Zingerman's, it got updated. And so the last line is to show love and caring in all of our actions, to enrich as many lives as we possibly can. It used to say to show loving and caring in all of our actions. It just didn't work with the whole rest of the mission. Right? They're just different things, right? So what I think, if a mission is done really well, or a vision, when it's done really well, it embodies what does your mission statement look like in action? What does it look like when we're living our mission statement in a lot of different ways, right? A vision is also not a strategic plan. So I mentioned the vision is the what, strategic plan is the how, right? So I drove here from Michigan yesterday. I had the address of this hotel. Even if I had just been trying to get to Schaumburg, right? I know how to get to Chicago. How much longer do you think it would have taken me to get here if I didn't have the specific address I was trying to get to? Forever. Have you driven around Schaumburg? A lot of it looks very similar to each other, right? It would have taken me a really long time. So we need to know where we're going in order to figure out how we're going to get there, right? And then the how can change over time. If we write a 10-year vision, we do strategic planning or annual planning every single year. My route driving yesterday was probably different than what it would have been 6 months ago, right? Because we're in construction season, and I, did one of the things that Google Map does, would have me get off the highway and get right back onto the highway. I was like, no, I did not like that. That feels like a jerk move, and I don't want Google to let me do that. Right? So strategic planning comes after. Once we know where we're going, then we do that work. A vision is also not something that someone else can write for you, right? Originally, Ari would say that it's not something a consultant can write for you, but it is an inside-out activity, right? I mentioned that we do vision facilitation. I am a process expert. I am not a content expert. I know how to run a business, but if I were to write a vision for Village Books, Sarah, how do you think I would do? Yeah, I've been to your store. I've been there multiple times. My brother lives in Bellingham, which is where her store is located, right? I'm a really good vision writer. I have a lot of experience. But I don't actually work there. There's no way that someone who is not a part of the vision can write it for you. And I will also say we've had to learn to say, when we do the vision facilitation, it is also not something AI can do for you. Yes, we had a group who, right, as part of the group visioning process, took one of the themes and they were writing, and then they were reading it to the rest of their colleagues, and their colleagues were like, who wrote this? This doesn't sound like us. I'm like, well, we put the ideas into ChatGPT, and everyone else was like, giant thumbs down, right? Because that can't tell you what you want. You have to know what you want. It can maybe help you smooth out grammar down the road, right? I do use Grammarly, but that's not for the original vision writing. It's also not only for writers. This is another thing that I think really slows people down or holds them back from visioning. You do not need to be a writer to write a vision. You just need to know what you want. I've done this with an earth-moving company where one of the gentlemen who came in sat down and pushed the workbook away from him and crossed his arms. I was like, what do you think is going to happen here today, sir? Like, we're not going to hurt you, right? They were not writers. In their first paragraph of their long-term vision, they used the word office about 20 times in one paragraph. Yeah. I read it sometimes as an example because I'm like, look, you don't have to be a writer. This is evidence. I love them. That was not good writing. I worked with an accounting firm who was writing the vision for when they hit 50 years, a 10-year vision. Now, did I personally find that vision inspiring? Absolutely not. It did not make me want to work there. Am I glad that they exist and that they're so exciting about accounting? Yes, I am. I was like, we don't all have to be excited about accounting. But they were like jazzed about it. I'm like, good, right? The last thing, and I feel like I've referenced this a little bit, what are visions for? You can use it for anything. When I did my very first keynote, I realized it's over 10 years ago now. I was at an art house theater in Boston. Me on a stage, bright lights in my eyes. I was nervous. I'd never done that before, right? I prefer training where I can actually interact with people, not just like talking to them for an hour. So I wrote a vision in the morning for how I was going to feel later that afternoon going to a cocktail mixer that I knew that they were going to have. One of the things I wrote in my vision that was someone came up to me afterwards and gave me a high five. Right? I did communicate it back with people in Ann Arbor. No one in that room knew about my vision, but I had 2 different people come up and give me a high five later. I was like, oh, nailed it. Right? I'm going to talk about this in a minute. I acknowledge reality. I knew it wasn't going to be awesome, and I put that in my vision. I was like, I stumbled over the telling of the first story. I did, but I recovered, which I also put in my vision. So we use visions. I use visions for a lot of different things. When I was buying a house, I wrote a vision. It was really helpful. I was a first-time home buyer. This was 14 years ago, right? The market was like, it was hard to buy a house in Ann Arbor, especially as a single person, right? So I wrote a vision of what did I want my house to look like? What did I want it to feel like? So what I pictured in my mind was an adorable little Cape Cod or bungalow, right? 2 stories, deep front porch I could sit on when it rained. It's going to have hardwood floors. It was going to be really warm and welcoming because I like to entertain. So I was like, people would feel welcome in my home. I could afford it. That was also in my vision. What did I buy? I bought a brick ranch in a sea of other brick ranches that all are exactly the same. I got hardwood floors. They have never been refinished since 1960. So I wasn't specific enough about that. I have a cement stoop that's about 3 feet, so no deep front porch. I do have like a 2-foot overhang, which is just enough to be annoying with my front garden, right? But I will say that what I nailed was how my house feels, right? And I could afford it, right? That I did nail for sure, and I can afford it more now. But I host an annual party, right? My Christmas party is a murder mystery party every year. The Ho-Ho homicide was the first one. This year is going to be 10 years. And that day in particular is when I really think about the fulfillment of that vision. It feels my house is like decorated. I've got food. I've got beverages. People are so comfortable. This past year, I got a new refrigerator that has a beverage drawer. And I just kept watching people drinking. I was like, okay, you found that. Cool. Oh, look, you've got the fancy sparkling water. All right, excellent. I'm so glad everyone's so comfortable in my home. Saving that for later, but that's okay. No, I mean, in reality, I was very happy to have people feel that comfortable that they could just raid my fridge, right? So that day to me now has become kind of the embodiment of that vision, even if it doesn't look the way that I thought it would look, right? It's my first house, not my forever house. Someday I'll have a deep front porch that I can sit on when it rains. I could theoretically stand against my house under the overhang if I really wanted to. I don't. Okay. So in the workbook, I wanted to show you a couple of different examples. So we're not going to read them necessarily, but you can see there's a change vision. We had a really key employee let us know that she was leaving. So we wrote a vision, and I believe this vision was for about 3 months. It was written with her and the managing partner for when she was going to be leaving. The bottom is a project vision. Page 7 is another change vision. Our events concierge wanted to have pronoun stickers for people who come to our events in Ann Arbor. And so this is our change process. She wrote compelling reasons and her vision of what did it look like once we had made this change. So we've now been doing this for about a year. It's been very well received. Page 8 is another one. This was a 10-year vision written for the entire state of Virginia, for the Virginia food system. It was very inspiring. This is just one excerpt of the page, but one of the things I really love it is at the start of the 3rd paragraph, they say that these farmers and water people are open, accepting, widely diverse, and are generally healthy. Like, let's know our audience and be real about what is true, right? But you can see in all of them, they are written as though they're already happening, but this was written 10 years out into the future, right? So that vision hasn't come to completion yet. Yeah, it was for 2027. So we're coming up on that. All right, any questions about what you've seen so far about the visions, about what a vision is and what you could use it for?
Is like realism paired with being inspiring? Because it's like with your story with the first house, it's like, okay, is it a lot in our real estate world? It's not exactly realistic to get everything you want in your first house. And so because you said like shoot for inspiring, but how much is like too inspiring versus to the point where it's like gonna feel not possible? So how do you like balance realism and
so that's the strategically sound. And so when we talk about the feedback, other people can help you rein in your vision. An example of this too is I will tell you that when people first start writing visions, they're almost always way more strategically sound, right? So my first vision I wanted to be a trainer, right? I wanted to be in the job that I'm in. I've now been in it for 12 or 13 years. When I first talked to Stash and Maggie about wanting to do this, Stash had me write a 3-year vision of like myself as a trainer. And I wrote the vision and I was like, well, this is so inspiring. So great. And I shared it with Stash and he read it and he kind of passed it back and was like, nope, too strategically sound, not inspiring enough. And at the moment I was like, no, this is super inspiring. He was 100% correct. Right? I accomplished that vision in about a year instead of the 3 years. But I didn't have enough practice to be able to know what is truly inspiring versus strategically sound, and you never really know. So that's why I say I want to err on the side of being inspiring, but it has to be rooted in reality. When other people give you feedback, they will tell you when they think you're reaching too far. Right? Or that like, this sounds great, but man, that feels like a 10-year plan, not a 3-year. Right? I mean, so other people in their feedback will really help with that. Will rein in the scale. Yeah. I mean, and we're going to talk about the insider tips next, because I think this will help a little bit as well. Right? Number 1, write in present tense. I have stressed this already. It is though it is already happening. We have a great kind of friend to the Zingerman's organization who's in Springfield, Missouri, called Askinosie Chocolate, Sean Askinosie. So they do bean to bar. And so he actually goes back and works with some of the cacao producers, like he has a great relationship with his people in Tanzania. And so he is one of the few producers that actually brings back finished chocolate. Most cacao producers have never had finished chocolate made with their beans, right? They export all of it and they're not making like chocolate bars. They'll have it in other ways. So Sean so he does that. He also teaches them visioning, right? And so what he tells them is like, imagine that you're opening a door and on the other side of the door is that future, right? So that imagery. So you're either opening a door to your future self, or you're in another colleague used to use hot air balloon. She's like, you're in a hot air balloon and you're looking down on that future, whatever it takes to think about what is it happening. So the language is I am, not I'm going to, right? Or we are, or this is versus we will, or we're going to, right? That language creeps into visions all the time. Like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. It's like, no, you're writing the vision as though it's already happening or has happened, right? With a long-term vision. If you want to be recognized as one of the best employers in your area, That is something that could have been accomplished maybe 3 years previously in a 10-year vision. You don't have to wait for 10 years. Right? And I stress this, right? You're writing it as though you're in that moment in the future. So what can help to make that true is to build in a sensory component, right? To describe the details of what is actually going on around you in a very descriptive nature. So what do you smell, right? Is it fresh cut grass? Is the flowers that are blooming right now, right? Is it freshly brewed coffee, right? I work with an orthodontic practice in Hawaii. Sadly, virtually, not in person. I was really disappointed. They were writing a vision for 6 months when they were welcoming they bought a practice and it was going to be a part of it. And they were describing the flowers that were blooming as you walked up to that practice in 6 months. And I was like, I don't even know what those look like or smell like, but I can picture it in my mind. It's like, I've never wanted to go to the orthodontist more than that moment. Right? What do you feel? Like tactilely, not emotions. We'll talk about emotions in a minute. Right? Is it the sun on your skin? Is it the nip of fall in the air? Right? I think those are the kind of things that can really help root you in that place, right? I mean, for me, whenever I write a vision that's set in May, I talk about fresh mowed grass, right? Because that is such an embodiment to me of spring. And then what do you see? Do you have laughing guests? Do you have smiling staff with a calm sense of purpose? Right? Is there freshly painted signage? Do you have a new space? Right? Have you rearranged things, whatever it is? And then it isn't here, but I also think you can think about what do you hear? Because I mean, you want to engage people on the different senses. So do you hear laughter? Do you hear quiet? Do you hear like a raucous children's story time? Right? Do you hear giggles? Those are the kind of things that I think can really help people picture it in their minds. The other thing I want to think about here too is I talked about this. So what are you feeling physically, but what are you feeling in your emotions? Right? Are you happy? Are you proud? Are you excited? Are you anxious, but also nervous? Right? Working with principals, we were talking about like they wrote visions for the end of their next school year. So there is a sense of like relief, but also sadness that happens at the end of a school year. My mom was a teacher, and so I very much know about that, right? So you can feel that like sense of like nostalgia, though it's happening right now. When you don't know how you're going to do something, putting the emotions can really help in the vision. Like I'm pleased with what we've accomplished. I'm proud of what we've done. I'm happy about this. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know I want to feel happy on the other side. I also think it can help. I mean, because some people are going to really tap into the sensory stuff and the emotions. Other people want all the tangible stuff, right? They want to know, like, what is real, visible evidence of success? Things like, what is your sales number? How many staff do you have? What are your customers saying? Right? I worked with a wealth management company that was writing a 10-year vision. At the time, they talk about AUM. I've learned this term. AUM is assets under management. At the time, they had about $675 million in assets under management for their clients. 10-year vision, they talked about wanting to put $1 billion in assets under management. They got nervous and they took it out. But when we went to help them write their next long-term vision, they were at like 950 million in assets under management. They were skirting 1 billion. And I wish that they had just planted that flag in the sand and kind of given themselves permission to dream. And if you don't want to put just one number, you can put a range, right? Like we did with our businesses, 12 to 18, 12 to 15. We want to be doing about this much in sales. That is something that's been very important for ZingTrain. I mean, pre-pandemic, we had higher sales than we do today, but we talked about like at the time we were doing our next long-term vision, we're doing about 2.4 million in sales. And we talked about in 10 years, did we want to put 3 million as a marker? And we realized we didn't because we wanted to keep about the same number of staff that we had. And we had capacity to grow, but only up to a certain point. And growing past that point was not going to be the kind of business that we wanted to be anymore. Now I'm like, 2, that was a nice number. 2 point, like we could get back to 1.8. That would be also awesome. Yeah. So now, I mean, one of our big visions is back to profitability. That's a big goal, right? So tangible outcomes and acknowledge reality, right? It's not all sunshine and kittens. It's not going to be perfect all the time, that is a real thing. So you can put in that you think it can be hard, right? So include the unknown. We weren't sure how we were going to do it, but we worked hard and we did it anyway, right? I mean, that was essentially that definition of fun. We're committed to exploring this, although we don't know exactly how we're going to do it or what that's going to look like.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the Zingerman's ones that were the 2009, 2020, 2032. And the visioning started in 2017. And then 2020 hits.
Yeah.
And that seems like just a complete break with the
Yep.
reality. And so it wasn't our business went a little sideways, but the world is broken.
Yep.
How
I'll
do you
tell
not
you.
throw it out the window?
So I'll tell you, ZingTrain in particular. So we have the 2032 vision, right, which is the big Zingerman's vision. Every single one of our businesses has their own vision, which is much more germane to the work that they do. So ZingTrain at the time had a 2028 vision. And so March of 2020 hit, we had 5 weeks of furloughs, right? Everyone was furloughed. It felt like longer than 5 weeks because we didn't exactly know when it was going to end. We got the PPP money. We came back with a smaller, limited staff. And one of the first things we did was write a vision for 8 weeks, which was when the money was going to run out, right? So at the end of that, we were a 100% in-person training company. Screeching halt. No one's doing anything in person. So we were like, okay, cool. We've said we wanted to do virtual training. Now we have to figure it out. Fun. But in May of 2020, we did our first virtual workshop, which was visioning, right? Creating a vision of greatness, because that was a tool that was really helpful for a lot of people, especially in the face of uncertainty, because I didn't know what everything was going to look like, but I did know how I wanted to feel and that I wanted to be safe. Right? That ZingTrain, in that 8-week vision, we wanted to start making money, right? The business could afford to lose money, but not forever. And so we, as a part of us thinking about what that 8-week vision was going to look like, we looked at our 2028 vision and nothing in it was untrue. What we ended up doing, that it was still what we wanted. We still wanted to be able to travel and have experiences with people wherever they were. We still wanted to have people come to our training facility in Ann Arbor. What we did was we added virtual training, which we're still doing. So for us, our core is still this and the 2-day seminars, and then virtual is a great addition. But fundamentally, we looked at it and it wasn't wrong. It was still what we wanted. Some of our other business, and I think that was true for all of the Zingerman's businesses. I will say that our mail order business had a great time. They were very busy. Yeah, they did well. And what was great is because they actually floated a number of our production businesses, right? They bought bread, they bought cheese, they bought coffee, and helped those businesses stay afloat. But I mean, that is the decision to make, though, is if it didn't feel true anymore, then we would have written another one. But that's where also having different scales of vision can be very helpful. Yeah, they are nested. I often use I love analogies. So if you picture a really big patio umbrella as the Zingerman's 32 vision, underneath that you have maybe a golf umbrella for the bigger businesses like the bakery, the bakehouse, right? And then they have multiple other personal umbrellas under that golf umbrella for their different departments, right? Like the teaching bakery, what they want is going to be really different than the bake shop, which is the retail side versus the production departments, right? But they all still need to be in alignment. We also use visions as part of our annual reviews. And so if someone's umbrella's skirting out underneath away from the business umbrella, that's okay. We want people to be successful in whatever they want to do, even if it's not here. So maybe they want to leave and open their own business. ZingTrain has had 2 different administrative assistants leave to teach yoga. 2 in a relatively short span of time. Not an issue with our current administrative assistant, but I was we should ask that question in the interview process. Do you practice yoga? Because no, not here. I mean, I'm joking, but not really. So they don't let me hire. I want to say too, so the putting the messy middle in the vision for a change can be really helpful. Has anyone done a kitchen renovation? Yeah, so you might be familiar with what Paul has called the zone of doubt and blame, right? Where demo has happened, you are far enough into it that you can't go back, but you're not far enough that it feels like it's going to turn out well, right? That is the zone of doubt and blame, where we start turning to each other and be like, who's dumb idea was this anyway? Oh, it was mine. Great. Putting that in your vision and being like halfway through, we thought it would never work, or like it looked terrible, can help when that moment happens. You can be like, oh, we must be about halfway because it's happening right now. I can refer back to the vision and feel comfort to know like we're going to get on the other side of that. So I think acknowledging reality in a vision is really important. It is not just puppies and kittens and sunshine and roses all the time. Like, let's make sure that we don't spin ourselves a story in our visions that has no way of happening. All right, I'm going to talk about the vision recipe briefly here, right? This is on page 9. In a moment, I'm going to give you a chance. You're going to write 2 different visions, one very short term, one a little bit longer. So I want you to think about whatever the topic is you want to write for your longer vision. So I'm going to lead you through this process. The reason the line is there, because essentially that's where the work stops in this moment, right? The rest, steps 4 through 8 or 5 through 8, will happen further down the road. Okay, I'm gonna lead you steps 1 through 4. Okay, because of course it's a recipe, by the way. Did I mention we were a food business? This is what we do. Okay, at the top of page 10, this is gonna be a practice vision. This is a very short-term vision. You are writing it for when you are heading home after Children's Institute. Right, so I want you to think about what do you have going on for the rest of your time here. Different people are going to leave at different times, so that's why it wasn't super specific, right? But it's June something, and you're pleased and proud, or you're happy with your time here. So you only have the room on the bottom of page 10. I'm only going to give you about maybe 4 minutes to write this, but I want you to write in longhand story form. I'm heading home, and I'm happy with how my Children's Institute experience went. Okay? Write as much as you can in that space there. Go. Are you more or less excited about the rest of your time here? More? Yeah, putting yourself kind of in that future mindset can just be really helpful. I also find visions for like that near term or short term to be helpful when I know I need to have a really difficult conversation, right? Or I'm doing something I don't really want to do. I will write a short, like 1 paragraph, like here's how I feel on the other side of that, because it helps me kind of set my intentions and it changes the way that I approach the hard thing that I'm working on doing. Okay. At the end, I'm gonna give you a challenge about your visions, which is the first 5 people to email me at the end of Children's Institute and tell me how it goes. We'll get one of Ari's pamphlets as a PDF for free. So just know we're gonna come back to that. All right. The next thing we're gonna do at the top of page 11. We're going to do, this is the beginning of getting ready to write that longer vision, is to do a listing of prouds. So when I say go, I want you to list anything and everything you are proud of from your entire life up until now. It can be big, it can be little, it can be contributing to someone else's success. There is no judgment. You are not sharing this with anyone, but I will tell you, I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this, and I want you to list the entire time. Do not edit yourself. Do not hold yourself back. If you have a thought, write it down because you're probably proud of it in some degree, right? So like no judgment, and stop judging yourself on this too, okay? So about 2 minutes to list everything in your entire life up until this moment you are proud of. Right? It could be having gotten a job. It could be opening a business, buying a house, like renting an apartment, making a cake. I don't care. It's whatever you're proud of. Ready? Go. Okay. I'm going to ask, who found their energy going like this? Ooh. Yeah, it often happens. People have like an energy dip because they're like, oh my God, I don't know. What am I proud of? Right. But then as you start lifting, it's a palpable change in the room to see the energy increase. What's often fun for me from my perspective is I get to see all the little secret smiles as people are writing. They're like, right? This is an energy shift, and it is an important part of the visioning process. Why do you think we would have you start with prouds?
Consider what you've already done so that it's possible for you to continue to do more.
Yeah, you're essentially building yourself up. You are a person who has accomplished things up until this moment of time, right? So getting yourself in that right headspace where you're building on your own past success, I think we think of Prouds as almost like the leavening agent in the visioning process, right? As an overall part of the ingredients, it's really small, but it acts as like the baking soda. So has anyone ever made biscuits, right? What happens when you don't include baking soda when you make biscuits? Yeah, you get hockey pucks, right? They don't rise. It's the same thing with Prouds. It is a very small step. It is very easy to skip. But if you don't get the same kind of lift or is it a crucial ingredient in the visioning process? Okay, so even when you think like, oh, no, I can just start writing, still do the Prouds. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to give you a chance to write a personal vision of greatness. In the workbook and here, it says to write it for a year from now. If you have something else in mind that you want to write a vision of, you are welcome to write it for whatever time frame you want. Right? The thing about the time frame is it's variable. I can't tell you what the right time frame is. If it's a change, I would encourage you to write the vision not from when the change is happening, but for like 2 or 3 months after it, when you've had a chance to kick the tires and make adjustments so that it is working right down the road. If it's for a vacation, write it for when you're coming home, right? If you want to clean out the garage, write it for like a week later and you're pulling in and everything's beautiful and still in its place, right? I mean, so you want to write it for past the point of completion. But the scale really determines how long your vision is going to be. If you can't think of anything that you want to write a vision for, write it for 1 year. Right? That's a pretty straightforward. What is success going to look like for you? Maybe at Children's Institute in 2027. When you start writing, there's room on pages 12 and 13 for you to write. I already gave you the insider tips. I don't want you to be constrained by the how. I want you to really focus on the what. You're going to use the hot pen technique, which is that you're going to put your pen to paper and you're not going to lift the pen up. You're going to get it flowing. Stosh sometimes would have a hard time getting his brain kicked in. And so he would like just do loops, right? Or he would write Mary Had a Little Lamb until the actual words started coming out, right? Do not edit yourself. I want you to write from the heart, not your head. And I want you to send the voices away. Does anyone have that voice in your head that's like, oh, why do you want that? You shouldn't do that, right? Those voices do not have a place in visioning, so you can send them to me, and I will babysit them for the purposes of this visioning exercise. I will also tell, if it is one of your parents, I'll tell them to just be shh. Okay? So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to write. You've got pages 12 and 13. Write as much as you can. I encourage you to do the hot pen and to use the entire time. A vision of success. Ready, set, go. All right, I see a couple of folks shaking out their hand. I know we're not used to writing longhand anymore, but I will tell you there is something about the kinesthetic connection between writing longhand and kind of the heart connection that supersedes what your rational brain might be saying. Like, yes, you should do this. No, you shouldn't do this. It is not uncommon when people do write longhand, their first visions, things come out that you weren't always aware that you really wanted, right? That wealth management company that I talked about, they liked visioning so much that they asked Dash and I to come and do a personal visioning class, right? Which is essentially what this is, with everyone who worked there. And one of this is such a weird trend. You'll see why. One of their advisors wrote a vision and she wanted to get certified to teach yoga. Why do I know so many people? I'll tell you, one of my close friends is a professor at the University of Memphis. She's becoming a full professor this summer, also teaches yoga. So many people, I don't practice yoga. I just attract yoga people in my life. Anyway, that was one thing that she had come out. She's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I wanted this. And the great thing about the communication is one of her coworkers said, oh, did you know that my cousin is actually a yoga certified instructor? Like, she will teach you how to get certified to teach yoga. And she was like, no, I didn't know that, right? So this is where it's not quite metaphysical, but if you can share your vision, then other people actually know what you want and they can help connect you to resources, right? On a pretty practical level. In the interest of time, on page 14 is an exercise about sharing your vision. I want to go past it, and then if we have time, we'll come back to it because there's some other stuff that I would like to prioritize. But this can be a helpful way of sharing, reading a vision and getting feedback from someone. And I would say this is not someone who has a skin in the game, right? This is for this kind of environment where the other person is not going to, they don't have any say in your vision, but can just reflect back things to you. Okay. But again, Brenda Uland, has anyone heard of her? She wrote a book called If You Want to Write. I'm going to share 2 quotes, but I like this, the idea that she felt very strongly that it was important to read it out loud. For one, sometimes that tips into emotions that like writing it you can feel one way, but when you read it, you're like, oh God, what? So like, I mean, I've had that happen. It's like, I didn't realize I felt that strongly about that. And that there's something about that. And then her other, we're going to pass this. I love this quote, right? Because I want you to think about the inspiration for your vision doesn't happen just at once. This quote is also on page 15 about, I want to talk about keeping the word draft on your vision. But this quote, I just think is really true. You don't only have ideas once. Right? So when you write your vision, it is not uncommon, especially if you're doing something big and meaningful and long-term, that tomorrow morning when you're in the shower, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I should have put that in my vision. Yes, great. You still can add it, right? You're not done. So I want you to understand that like, you don't only have to write the vision once, you can write the beginning of it and then continue to add to it. So to go from the first draft to action, this is the part we didn't always use to teach this, but people are always like, now what? Okay, well, I'll tell you now what. For one, keep the word draft on your vision and keep going. Keep working on it. Add those ideas that continue to come to you, put it on the computer so that you can get some grammar and spelling help. It's easier to share it with other people that way as well. And keeping the word draft on it is really important as well. Because when you share it for feedback, if it doesn't say draft, people feel like it's done and they won't give you feedback. Right? So the word draft kind of gives people permission to understand this is still a work in progress. It isn't finished. I will also say too, if you hate it, scrap it, start over. That's okay. Did anyone, I think it's Anne Lamott talked about your crappy first draft, although that wasn't the term that she used. Right? And it was like, you have to write the crappy first draft before you can do the editing work and get to future drafts. So just throw it out there. The second thing, okay, I talked about this, getting input and asking for feedback. With visions in particular, we tend to be vulnerable about ourselves when we're writing personal visions, and just asking someone they thought does not get you the kind of feedback that you want. We want productive, constructive feedback. So when we do this work, we ask these questions specifically. Number 1, what did you find compelling or exciting or inspiring about this vision? Because what you want is for people to tell you what they're excited about from your vision. And then if it's a shared vision, you can punch that stuff up. You can add to it. You can make it a little bit longer. You can make it even better, right? What you don't want to do is to remove it if that's the stuff that people were connecting with and resonating with. Or like if you do need to remove it, like just do it with that consideration. The second one is anything unclear and needs more explanation. I think you know what to do with that information. Make it more clear. This one, is anything significantly missing or is anything significant missing? The reason we use the word significant is because I don't want someone to give me like any idea that springs into their mind about what they think could be missing. I want you to give me the things that you think this vision will not be complete unless I add it. The other thing, and I'm going to say this now about feedback. Feedback is just feedback. You don't have to use it. It's someone's opinion. It's their perspective. It is okay to hear what someone else says and be like, okay, I don't think that's missing. I'm not going to add it. If it is a company vision or like a big vision that you want other people to get bought in, what is really helpful, one of the many things that Stosh taught us is that when you ask people your feedback, it is important to tell them what you heard and what you're going to do with that information. So if it is something that you want, you're like, that is missing, I am going to add it, then great, just tell people that. If it is something that is missing on purpose and that you're not going to add it, it's really helpful to tell them that and why, right? Or if it's not right now, but not never, again, just being able to give people some of that framing. There are things going on in your head that they don't have access to, right? You know how to make decisions often as an owner, as a leader, that other people just don't have that same experience as you. The last question here, is there anything in the vision that would keep you up at night or cause discomfort? We don't always ask that question. Stash used to ask it in the format of like, are there any showstoppers in the vision? But then I had someone ask me, and he meant it was something that would stop the show from moving forward. I had someone who had seen a show on Broadway, and they're like, well, showstoppers are good, right? You want the showstopper. I was like, no, we mean very different things by that, right? So what this means is there something that would prevent you from supporting the vision? And so we don't always ask that question because often not everyone has the authority to say whether it would prevent them from supporting the vision. Right, but asking it in a more gentle way like this, there's anything that would keep you up at night, sometimes it can uncover things that people are feeling anxious about, but wouldn't express otherwise. Right, so I worked with in Vermont, okay. So they're an engineering company, I know that. They work with water systems. I don't know, we've tapped out on my knowledge of what they do. I think they do some water remediation, but they do big scale multi-year projects. And so they wrote a vision that we helped them facilitate. I went back and helped them roll it out. And so they chose to ask everyone this question. And some of the questions that people were asking were really interesting, right? To that last one. Is there anything that would cause discomfort? They were just bringing up kind of different pain points that they were already experiencing or could see coming, that the leaders who wrote that vision, the 12 top people out of a team of 40, just they weren't seeing. So it doesn't mean that there's stuff that's going to come out, but we need to figure out how to address what is making people uncomfortable about this. Okay, they chose to ask that question, and they got some pretty interesting answers. They were also in the room listening to all of their staff ask those questions, and it was fun to see kind of the just hadn't thought about it that way. The next one, don't wait for perfection to get started. Your vision is never going to be 100% perfect. We have a lot of wordsmithers. Ari is a prolific writer. He's written multiple business books. He's written a bunch of pamphlets. He has a very specific style. It's why, he didn't write the vision alone, the Zingerman's long-term vision, but there's a reason why our 2032 vision is 12 pages long. He will never use one word to say something when he could use 7. He will not just tell you something once, he'll tell you 3 different times, right? So there's a lot of back and forth about that before a vision is final. It's never going to be perfect, but if you can get to 94% satisfied and then willing to work on it, aim for that. Don't aim for 100% perfect. And then the last one is to share your vision. It's that communication step. I cannot under stress how important that is. Right? People won't know what you want if you don't share it with them. And I mean this in your personal lives. I mean this for your businesses or your professional lives, right? Often people at Zingerman, people at Zingerman's will write new jobs for themselves as a way to figure out a way to stay in the business but do something different. It doesn't always work, but it's really helpful for their managers to know where that person's head is at and what they really want. So if someone wants to be a leader, but they're not ready, then okay, now I know that in 2 years, you might be ready for a leadership position because I can help develop the skills that you need in order to make that happen down the road. But I didn't know that you wanted to do that. Before, I want to do a brief reflection. What questions of clarification do you have on anything that you've heard so far, or just anything you've ever wanted to know? I can't. Maybe that's really big. Yes.
So I'm thinking about, so if we were to use something like this at our store, just thinking about kind of the progression or sequencing of having other staff involved in the process.
So if you wanted to write a long-term vision for the store, so I mentioned that we do, so I'm going to tell you how this process works when we do this, when we facilitate this. So often it is a 1-day session. We start with kind of general things. We do a list of prouds as the introduction. So we do prouds and hopes. So what are you the proudest from having, being a part of this business? And what are you the most hopeful for in the future? Which kind of just starts getting people's minds in that future state. Then we do a little bit of sharing about stuff, and then we hear a view from the leader. So this would be, you would need to have some idea of what you wanted to tell people about What is kind of our current state? What do I see as opportunities and challenges in the next couple of years? And then what is my personal vision, maybe for 5 years? And this is like a 5 to 6 minute section. It is not like no PowerPoint, although people have used PowerPoint, don't like it. We facilitate an open forum where people can ask questions of clarification. Because it is not uncommon when we're doing this work, right? I was out in Washington, which is when I got to visit last October, came to the store. I was working with a company that the founder, been in business for 25 years. No one in the room knew that his event horizon was 3 years out. Right? They didn't know he was planning to retire. He's the innovator. He's the founder, 3 years, which is not a lot of time in that length of company, right? And they do very technical, like they hand make cords, like very high-end audio cords that are also used in medical settings. Like one cord can cost $13,000. Yeah, I was like, I'm going to walk very carefully and not break anything, right? So one of the things that was important about that visioning was what did he want? What did he see his role going forward? Because he wasn't just going to be gone. He wanted to be in the innovator role, but not the CEO anymore, right? So that was really important for everyone to hear that. And then they could ask questions of clarification. Well, can we, and this almost always comes up when there's a big transition. Well, can we still ask you questions? Like, yes, I'm not dying. I will continue to exist. And you can call on my expertise, right? But it is helpful. There's a lot of fear around that kind of big transition. So doing it together is really helpful. Then after we've done that, we talk about what a vision is. We go through some of the same stuff. We then have people ideate on flip charts. Just list what does success look like in 10 years? Be specific. Sell your different ideas, right? So it's like, how many staff? What is the sales number? We did this really fun outing, right? Some people will write really weird things we've all taken a trip to Hawaii. And I'm like, that is so optimistic for you, right? Or let's see, the earth moving company, but that they wanted an ice cream machine. They were that made it into the final vision, right? And on the flip chart, we leave a perimeter on the left side, right? Like a column, because after everyone has done all the brainstorming, they come up with a bunch of ideas, everyone gets a marker. Stash used to call them a PVI, or personal voting instrument. It's like a marker. He was a big fan of the TLA, the 3-letter acronym. Yeah, I feel like I have to keep these jokes going in Stash's honor. So then people get a number of votes, and it's often something like 13 to 15, 15 to 17, right? And then an asterisk, because they can only vote for each item once. But the asterisk is the equivalent of putting all of your ideas on one, right? So then everyone gets to vote. We then have a group help us identify what the top vote getters were and pull out the themes. So the themes become the headlines, like you saw for the Zingerman's vision, right? Then we get into small groups and people actually start writing based on that theme idea. The themes are pretty consistent. So one is like usually facilities or physical space, right? So what does it look like? Are we expanding? Have we gotten new shelves? Have we done new lighting, right? Whatever that is going to be. Then there's one about the staff and about the work experience. Then there's one about customers and customer service, right? This is where we talk about, is anything missing? Because often when you are really good at what you do, you forget to put that thing in your vision. You're focused on everything else. So we work with a catering company here in Chicago to do this work, and the themes that emerged, food wasn't anywhere on there. And once you call that out, they're like, oh yeah, no, we should have that as a theme. Like, yeah, it's what you do, but it was such an assumption that they would continue to have really excellent food and they would continue to innovate that it didn't emerge as a theme, but you can always add to it, right? So usually if we have time, we'll rotate. So one group will write on theme A and then they'll write on theme B. And if we have time, theme C. So someone else will come in and take what they wrote on theme A and they'll edit it in theme B and they'll add to it. So by the time we are done in one day, you have like 5 or 6 pages of a written vision that has already been through a couple of rounds of editing. And we do feedback. We read it all out and give feedback. Now, that's what we do. There is a webinar on our website that talks about the group visioning process. There are other ways to do it, like how Zingerman's has done it, is where all the managing partners write their own vision, and then they meld them all together, which is why it took 3 years to write the last one. So I will not advocate for that. That took a very long time to get to cohesion. right? So there's different ways of doing it, but I think the more people you can have in the room for the general ideation, the more buy-in you have to the finished vision. People want to be a part of it. All right, so your vision challenge, I mentioned this. If you choose to accept it, on the top of page 16, you can email me and tell me, how did it go? Right? You wrote your vision for the End of Children's Institute. Did you accomplish what you set out to do? Did it change how you approached your time here? I have done this before, and it is really interesting to me. I've done it in different settings, but it is almost always people are like, I reached out and talked to someone, which I wouldn't have done if I hadn't said that I wanted to do it in my vision, right? So kind of putting that flag in the sand makes it more likely that you're going to do it because it's in your mind now. The final reflection. So what did you find interesting, surprising, or useful from today's workshop? What will you write your next vision about? And what is one thing you're particularly excited to accomplish from the vision that you wrote today? Either your 1-year vision or the longer vision. So take a moment to answer those questions. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. All right, I'd love to hear from a couple of folks, your answers to the first question.
I said the process of how to affect my team. And I like to with like the stakeholders because they're a very small like actual team, but I have a lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
And get them to get there because they have to work there.
Yeah.
I think an understanding between the vision and the strategic plan is often I go to action.
Yep.
And having the vision kind of ground you.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to do the strategic plan once you have the vision.
I love the idea of making a list of crowds. And I just feel like that is such a good team exercise.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what people say. I will say one thing is, this is just a process tip, is have people write it down. Because for some reason, even adults, if you don't write it down and someone else says the same thing, the instinct is like, well, they stole my idea. Like, they didn't steal it, you had the same one, and that's okay. We put hash marks next to it when multiple people have the same idea. But if people write it down, it's easier for them to own that they had the same idea. I want to say two. So one, thank you all very much for choosing to be here and for writing your visions. I am going to ask if you are ever willing to share a vision with us. I would have loved to have a bookstore example in the workbook, but we don't have any. So if you have a change vision that you've worked on, if you have a vision for your store, a vision for whatever, I'm always looking for more examples that are real, right? So it's, and not just Zingerman's examples. I think that is valuable, but only up to a certain point. So if you are willing to share your vision and you're willing for us to share it on, would love to see them. I wanted to point out, there's a resource page in here, a testimonial from a visioning skeptic. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Ian's Pizza. Yeah, so Ian is a long time client. And he came to a seminar, 2006. So I actually met him when he came to that seminar in 2006. And he wrote his first vision, and he was like, if Zingerman says I should do it, then I should do it. But super hated it. And so he was very skeptical, but this whole little blog, it was a blog post, right? But he wrote this testimonial because it very much turned around for him. And so now they have a long-term vision. They've done more than one for Ian's Pizza. They're located in Madison, Wisconsin, Chicago, and Milwaukee. I was in Milwaukee earlier this month, and I actually texted Ian to be like, hi, where should I eat other than Ian's Pizza? I knew he's not in Milwaukee. He lives in Madison, but I was like, you probably know Milwaukee better than I do. So it was great. He gave me some recommendations, and I didn't follow any of them. But I went to a great restaurant. Anyway, I just thought that this is a good story for those of you who are thinking I'm not so sure about this. This testimonial, it's a real testimonial from a real business owner who's been pretty successful. I am going to be around until after breakfast tomorrow. So if you have questions, please, I'm going to go to the keynote tonight. I'm going to go to the opening reception. I will be at breakfast. I would love to talk more about visioning or anything else. I did leave some of our brochures. I've got business cards. You're welcome to take another candy bar and another workbook if you would like. And I can't wait to read your letters. I can't wait to read your visions if you're willing to share it. Oh, and I didn't say this. Please rate the session. Again, they really like to know who to invite back. So please let me know if you have questions. Thank you again for all of your great participation. And hopefully we'll talk visioning again in the future.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!